Welcome to the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba. Let's pick up where we left off here. The next chapter blog is 72 and a red moon rising. Right at the top, there's a picture of the zodiac, kind of like a clock or like a wheel, and in the center is a blood red moon. Now, I've got two scriptures here. One is from Job 38:31 through 33, which says, "Canst thou bind the sweet influence of the Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his season, or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth?" That's, again, Job 38:31 through 33 in the King James Version. And then the other scripture I have here is also King James Version, Genesis 1, verses 14 through 16, which says, "Then God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth. And it was so. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also." 72 and a red moon rising. The first thing I have here is the number 72 is a very interesting and significant number. Here are just a few entries mentioned on Wikipedia, and there's the Wikipedia link if you wanted to check that out. Now, I've got a whole bunch of bullet points there, and those aren't even all of them. There's a whole lot more on Wikipedia, but I'm just going to mention the ones that I have in bold out of that list. You can read the rest for yourself. The ones that I have in bold are, the mass of the moon is 1/72nd of that of the Earth. The axis of the Earth moves off 1 degree every 72 years compared to stars. The number of devils, according to the Lesser Key of Solomon, that's 72 devils. The god Osiris was enclosed in a coffin by 72 evil disciples and accomplices of Set. There are 72 goetic demons. Thoth of Egyptian mythology wins a 72nd of each day of the year from the moon in a game of droughts. As a favor to Nut, the sky goddess, he uses these portions to make the 5 intercalary days on which the remaining gods and goddesses are born. And again, there's another link there, the Wikipedia source. You can read more. Another website called Look Up Fellowship by Jeffrey Ratt has the following to say about the number. And there's a link there to Jeff's Look Up Fellowship website. He says this in one of his blogs. "It is said that Psalm 72 is a prophecy of the second coming of Christ and the millennium. Furthermore, many scholars point to Psalm 72 as a proof text to support the position that the land of Israel has expanded to include the whole earth. The true Israel of God in the New Covenant has expanded to include all Jews and Gentiles who accept Christ as their David." He goes on to say, "And we have 70 elders chosen in Numbers 11, verses 14 through 17, to assist Moses. These 70, plus Aaron and Moses, equals 72. The 72 who spoke on God's behalf to the people. Also, there were 72 ornaments on the menorah and the tabernacle, a symbol of light, and the oil in it, the Holy Spirit. Also, there were said to be 72 separate pieces of the veil in the temple, which separated the holy place from the most holy place. All these speak of the transmission of God's message. Additionally, the Greek Old Testament, the Septuagint, was said to have been translated by 72 Hebrew scholars, 6 from each tribe, in 72 days. Again, a transmission of God's message. Something else pertinent to our time is that the priestly garments are being remade for temple service. The garment of the high priest has brass bells and pomegranates woven into its hem. Interestingly, they have decided that 72 of each, alternating around the hem, will be used. Inspired? I think so. And this is just the beginning. You will find no shortage of to look and number 72. Again, I want to draw attention to just a few of the above listed bullet points, and those were the ones that I had just said a little while ago in bold, so I'm not going to read them again. Each of these, with Osiris, the Earth, the Moon, and the stars, or the constellations. Let's start with the stars. Scientists today and ancient astronomers of the past have observed that every 72 years, the stars in the sky appear to move 1 degree from their previous position on the horizon. Originally, the ancient Egyptian year was 360 days long. That number, of course, is identical to the number of degrees in a circle. In Egyptian mythology, Thoth was the keeper of secrets, and he was associated with the arts, science, astronomy, and writing in the form of hieroglyphs. In one legend, Thoth won a game of draughts with the moon, and thus was able to gain 5 extra days for the year. There's a link there for you to check out if you want to read more on that. So he encoded his knowledge of the precession of the stars, or the constellations, by multiplying 72 by the extra 5 days, arriving at 360, the number of degrees on a circle. Then, when 72 years are multiplied by the 360 degrees of a complete circular star cycle, we discover that it takes 25,920 years for each heavenly precession to be completed, at which time the whole thing starts all over again. The subject of the resetting of the precession has become a hot topic these days, especially as we approach the year 2012 and all the prophecies supposedly written about it by the Mayans. Did they arrive at their numbers the same way as the Egyptians? I don't know. But the concept does lead us into a discussion about December 21st, 2012, a date intimately connected to the number 72, the founding of the United States of America, and the emergence of the coming Antichrist. Now, I'd like you to draw your attention to the Great Seal of the United States, which was placed on the U.S. $1 bill by Freemasons President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Vice President Henry Wallace after Wallace met with occultist Nicholas Roerich. There's a link there for you to check out. For an excellent video presentation on this subject, check out Chris Pinto's documentary, Eye of the Phoenix, below, and that's where you can learn a little bit more about Nicholas Roerich and that whole deal. It's a very fascinating documentary, and I highly recommend it, Eye of the Phoenix. Now, consider what the highly regarded Freemason writer Manly P. Hall had to say about the front of our nation's Great Seal. He says, "Careful analysis of the seal discloses a mass of occult and Masonic symbols, chief among them the so-called American eagle, a bird which Benjamin Franklin declared unworthy to be chosen as the emblem of a great, powerful, and progressive people. Here again, only the student of symbolism can see through the subterfuge and realize that the American eagle upon the Great Seal is but a conventionalized phoenix, a fact plainly discernible from an examination of the original seal." That's from Manly P. Hall's book, The Secret Teaching of All Ages. Now, you have to realize that Manly P. Hall is a highly regarded Freemason writer. Hall says that the eagle that America is so well known for is actually a symbol of a conventionalized phoenix. Therefore, it is important to note here that the phoenix is also directly related to Osiris. For according to Egyptian mythology, the phoenix is associated with the sun god. She is called the Bennu, which means the ascending one, and essentially represents the soul of Osiris. Thus, the phoenix is yet another symbol for the rebirth of Osiris, rising out of the ashes of death. This gives even more meaning to the prophetic words of Jesus in Matthew 24, verses 24 through 28. There's a link there for you to go back and look at that. And makes the implications of America's role in the last days that much more sobering. For as you saw in Chris Pinto's previous videos, this country was not founded as a Christian nation so much as it was a Masonic nation whose sole purpose as the New Atlantis is to bring about the New World Order, the Order of Osiris. Virtually everything in our nation's iconography reveals this to be true. Another interesting observation concerning the phoenix comes from the Roman poet Ovid, who wrote the following. He writes, "Most beings spring from other individuals, but there is a certain kind which reproduces itself. The Assyrians call it the phoenix. It does not live on fruit or flowers, but on frankincense and odoriferous gums. When it has lived 500 years, it builds itself a nest in the branches of an oak or on the top of a palm tree. In this, it collects cinnamon and spikenard and myrrh, and of these materials builds a pile on which it deposits itself, and dying, breathes out its last breath amidst odors. From the body of the parent bird, a young phoenix issues forth, destined to live as long a life as its predecessor. When this has grown up and gained sufficient strength, it lifts its nest from the tree, its own cradle and its parent's sepulchre, and carries it to the city of Heliopolis in Egypt, and deposits it in the temple of the sun. Now, I find it extremely interesting that the lifespan of Osiris, the soul bird, is 500 years. Because according to the book of Enoch, 500 years is the allotted lifespan of the Nephilim, the offspring of the Watchers. And there's a footnote there for you to see where that is in the book of Enoch. This is significant because in the first blog, I made the connection that Nimrod was indeed a Nephilim hybrid by breaking down the Hebrew in Genesis 10:8. There's a lot that could be said about this, but I don't want to get too far off track here. See the Return of the Nephilim blog for more on this, and I haven't written that one yet, so you'll have to be patient on that. Now I have a picture of the back of the Great Seal of the United States that shows a little bit of elaboration with the numbers stacked up next to the rows of bricks in the unfinished pyramid. The back of the Great Seal of the United States of America is also very interesting and loaded with symbolism. Since there are 72 stones arranged in 13 rows forming the unfinished pyramid, everything in occult symbolism is deliberate and has meaning. So, what does it mean? Author, lecturer, and researcher Thomas Horn has an online series of articles that preempted the release of his book, Apollyon Rising 2012, both of which go into great depths on this subject. In one of those online articles he writes, and I've got links both to how you can get a hold of his book as well as the online article. He writes, "It is no coincidence that the start of the ending dates of the final 13 Ketuns of the Mesoamerican Mayan long count calendar are reflected in the 13 steps of the Pyramid of the United States Great Seal. That the steps of the pyramid were intended to convey units of time has been an open secret for many years. Though he was not sure what to make of it himself, Paul Foster Case wrote many years ago that, quote, since the date 1776 is placed on the bottom course of the pyramid, and since the number of 13 has been so important in the symbolism of this seal, it is not unreasonable to suppose that the 13 courses of the pyramid may represent 13 time periods, end quote. John Keene made an even more intriguing observation, directly coupling the Great Seal's trestle board date, 1776, and the Mayan ending date, 2012. And he says, this seal shows a 13-step pyramid with 1776 in Roman numerals. The year 1776 was not only the year that the Declaration of Independence was signed, it was also a special year on the Mayan calendar. Just as the last Ketun in the Great Cycle is Ketun 2012, the first Ketun in the cycle of 13 was Ketun 1776. In fact, the Ketun ended 33 days before the signing. So 1776 is the bottom level of the pyramid where the date is actually inscribed. The top of the pyramid is therefore 2012. For more information concerning the symbols and meanings contained in the imagery on the back of our U.S. $1 bill and our nation's Great Seal, click here and there's another link for you to check out. Again, everything in Freemasonic imagery is deliberate and pregnant with meaning. Our Great Seal points directly to the year 2012, and it does so from the starting date of our nation's founding. It therefore seems to be indicating that it is the destiny of America to bring about whatever is going to happen on December 21st, 2012. The seal not only ties this nation directly to the year 2012, but it is also loaded with symbols tied directly to Osiris Nimrod. So, what are we to derive from this? Considering the topics we have covered so far, and you can click on that to read some of the other things we've already talked about, I think it is more than reasonable to assume that just as Israel was the country through which God brought his Messiah, I believe the United States was specifically designed to be the agency through which the Antichrist will be brought back to life. But I don't believe it will happen here. and by that I mean here in the United States. I believe through our intervention and input, Osiris Nimrod will rise out of Egypt just like Jesus did. Now, in the scriptures it talks about how God has called his son out of Egypt. And there's a link there for you to check out for that scripture reference. And he will then, he being the Antichrist, will quickly become established as king once again in Babylon. As an American, I hate the thought that we could be the primary catalyst for bringing about the rise of Antichrist and the culmination of the last days. But the facts are hard to ignore. The deeper you investigate the meanings of our nation's icons, symbols, and monuments, the more you come to realize just how much this nation is steeped in the occult. Contrary to the average Christian's belief system that the United States is a, quote, Christian nation, end quote, we cannot get away from the fact that the vast majority of our founding fathers were not Christians, they were deists. There's a link for you to check out on that. They subscribed to many occult concepts and ideas. All it takes to confirm this is a casual walk through the nation's capital city, and especially the U.S. Capitol building. Stroll into the center of the building and look up into the womb of Isis. There you will see a painting called The Apotheosis of Washington. Apotheosis means to deify or make divine. In theology, the term refers to the idea that an individual has been raised to godlike stature. George Washington has become a god? What? I don't remember reading about that in history class. There's a picture there showing the apotheosis of George Washington in the Capitol Dome. It also shows some other interesting things, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now, I understand honoring presidents, leaders, and heroes, but turning them into gods? No, I don't think so. But there it is. As you look closer into heaven, assuming we're approaching this from a Christian worldview, you might expect to see imagery of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Perhaps angels like Michael and Gabriel, maybe. But no, that's not what we see in this painting. Instead, it is loaded with pagan gods like Hermes, Neptune, and Vulcan, among others. And notice also the 72 binding pentagrams surrounding the base of the mural. See, if you look at the picture, you can see there are circled pentagrams going all the way around, 72 of them, interestingly enough. Next thing I have here is a big picture of George Washington in a godlike posture, sitting on a throne, and people looking at him. What in the world is going on with all this? We know that the ancient pharaohs, Caesars, and emperors thought of themselves as gods, ruling over their nations, but our U.S. presidents too? Come on. Haven't we outgrown that kind of nonsense? That's what I thought until I started researching all of this for myself. The picture above is of Horatio Greenough's 1840 government-commissioned statue of George Washington enthroned as the god Zeus. This statue is specifically made to look similar to one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, the statue in the Temple of Zeus. There's a link there for you to check out for the statue of Zeus. And this sort of thing wasn't just limited to Washington either. Check out Lincoln's apotheosis. There's a picture there of Lincoln in this deified-like state. In 1865, images like this one started to show up depicting Lincoln as a Christ-like figure in the heavens. Note the cap of Mithra, Nimrod, hanging from the pole in the foreground. And I've got two links you can click here and here for other Abe apotheosis pictures. And there you can see other images with Abraham Lincoln being deified. Here's something else that needs to be pointed out concerning George Washington's statue. Why is our first president, one of our founding fathers, posed as the goat god Baphomet? In his work, Magic Book 4, the famed occultist and self-proclaimed father of Satanism, Aleister Crowley, had this to say concerning Baphomet. He says, "The devil does not exist. It is a false name invented by the Black Brothers to imply a unity in their ignorant muddle of dispersions. A devil who had unity would be a god. The devil is, historically, the god of any people that one personally dislikes. This serpent, Satan, is not the enemy of man, but he who made gods of our race, knowing good and evil. He bade, know thyself, and taught initiation. He is the devil of the Book of Thoth, and his emblem is Baphomet, the androgyny, who is the hieroglyph of arcane perfection. He is therefore life and love. But moreover, his letter is Ayin. That's the Hebrew letter he's referring to, the eye. So that he is light, and his zodiacal image is Capricornus, that leaping goat whose attribute is liberty. For Crowley and others, Baphomet is Satan himself. So here we have our first president deified as Lucifer. Lovely. Nothing like starting our nation off on the wrong foot. If the so-called father of our nation is depicted this way, what should that tell us about his children? Does not a father reproduce after his own kind? Do not children follow after the traits of their fathers? Now, by that I'm talking about our founding fathers. So could it therefore stand to reason that all of our other presidents since Washington might have been following his lead? I don't believe it is just a coincidence that nearly all of our presidents have either been Freemasons, associated with Freemasons, members of other secret societies such as Skull and Bones, or related to each other. Check out this interesting chart created by a 12-year-old girl who actually took the time to do the research for herself and compile it into a picture format. And I encourage you to check that out. There's a link there to the website, weareallrelated.com. And through this chart and through her research, she has connected all of our U.S. presidents except Martin Van Buren to King John Lackland of the House of Plantagenet. And I've got a link there to both King John Lackland and also another link to the House of Plantagenet. Very interesting reading. See also this video. There's another video you can check out for showing our presidents being all related. Now, even a CBS News report picked up on similar clues in the following video clip depicting people related to Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama. Now, the House of Plantagenet is a branch of the Angevins. Wikipedia notes, popular legends surrounding the Angevins suggested that they had corrupt demonic origins. While the chronicler Gerald of Wales is the key contemporaneous source for these stories, they often borrowed elements of the wider Melusine legend. For example, Gerald wrote in his De Instructione Principis of a certain Countess of Anjou who rarely attended Mass and one day flew away, never to be seen again. A similar story was attached to Eleanor of Aquitaine in the 13th century romance Richard something or other in French. I'm not going to try to pronounce that. Gerald also presents a list of sins committed by Geoffrey V and Henry II as further evidence of their corrupt origins. According to Gerald, these legends were not always discouraged by the Angevins. Richard the Lionheart was said to have remarked of his family that they come of the devil, and to the devil they would go. A similar statement is attributed to St. Bernard regarding Henry II. Henry II's sons reportedly defended their frequent infighting by saying, quote, "Do not deprive us of our heritage. We cannot help acting like devils," end quote. The legends surrounding the Angevins grew into English folklore and led some historians to give them the epithet, the Devil's Brood. So, if it is true that all our presidents are descendants of these characters, is it any wonder why this country has turned out the way it has? And those presidents who chose to break away from or expose the secrets were killed. Now, I don't believe John F. Kennedy was a saint by any stretch of the imagination. However, the speech given prior to his assassination is very interesting. And I got a YouTube video there showing the speech that JFK gave shortly before his assassination.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger public opinion. This means greater coverage and analysis of international news, for it is no longer far away and foreign, but close at hand and local. It means greater attention to improved understanding of the news, as well as improved transmission. And it means, finally, that government at all levels must meet its obligation to provide you with the fullest possible information outside the narrowest limits of national security. And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Now, personally, I've come to the conclusion that there really is no difference between Republicans and Democrats, and that Americans don't really elect their leaders. Our nation's presidents have been handpicked for us by the Luciferian elite. There's another video somebody has done showing all of the secret societies that literally every president we've had has been associated with, and you can watch that video presentation there just showing how every one of our presidents have been involved with some sort of secret society. And every secret society ties directly to Osiris, religion, Mystery Babylon, the Illuminati, and, of course, Nimrod. We simply choose which one by that I mean president, we want to rule over us. And of the two choices we are finally given to pick from, we are essentially given a choice between a phoenix and a pyramid. Both accomplish the same end just by different means, as both are essentially playing for the same Luciferian system. Which leads me to another point, and this is for those who still believe that our votes actually count for something. This is for those of you out there who disagree with me and who think that your vote actually matters. Believers in Jesus Christ need to do their research before believing these people that you're voting for. Jesus said, "By their fruits you shall know them." He says in Matthew 7, verses 15 through 20, in the New Living Translation I have, Jesus saying, "Beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep, but are really vicious wolves. You can identify them by their fruit, that is, by the way they act. Can you pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? A good tree produces good fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. A good tree can't produce bad fruit, and a bad tree can't produce good fruit. So every tree that does not produce good fruit is chopped down and thrown into the fire. Yes, just as you can identify a tree by its fruit, so you can identify people by their actions." Ultimately, all secret societies are descended from the Illuminati, which has descended from Nimrod. As such, and there's a link for you to check out on that, as such, they all inherently carry with them the spirit of Antichrist, and therefore, that is what truly ends up running and ruining this country through the kind of leadership that seems to always be associated with and a part of these secret societies. I'm of the opinion that if a candidate for public office, especially that of the presidency, if he has any affiliation with such organizations, we need to run the other way and have nothing to do with them. I don't know what better proof I could ask for to elaborate on and confirm the statement I made above about Republicans and Democrats both playing for the same Luciferian team than the 2004 run for president. Both George W. Bush and John Kerry openly admitted to being members of the Skull and Bones Society. There's a link for you to check that out for yourself. We saw both of them catering to the conservative and Christian voter base, trying to earn their votes. And there's a link here. It says, start to research this organization for yourself, and then tell me if you think either of these guys are Christians. Consider what this online source has to say about Skull and Bones and President Bush Sr. And there's a link to that online source that I grabbed this quote from. This individual says, the Skull and Bones also incorporates sexual activities into their practices. The death of the initiate will be as frightful as the use of human skeletons and ritual psychology can make it. This is from an Esquire magazine article called The Last Secrets of Skull and Bones by Ron Rosenbaum, page 89. Sexual perversion is part of ritual psychology. Ron Rosenbaum, author of the Esquire magazine article, stated that on initiation night, called Tap Night, quote, if one could climb to the Tower of Weir Hall, the odd castle that overlooks the Bones courtyard, one could hear strange cries and moans coming from the bowels of the tomb as the 15 newly tapped members were put through what sounded like a harrowing ordeal, end quote. That's from the Esquire September 1976 article, page 86. Further, initiates lay in coffins and tell their deepest and darkest sexual secrets as part of their initiation. Again, that's page 85 from that Esquire magazine. These experiences in the coffins incorporated sexual pain and resulted in being born again into the order, as we mentioned above, and that's Cooper, page 95. Now, powerful force charges through the participants of these ceremonies, transforming their lives dramatically. This type of ritual is classic Satanism. Anton LaVey states in his book, The Satanic Rituals, about this in Companion to the Satanic Bible, page 57. The ceremony of rebirth takes place in a large coffin. This is similar to the coffin symbolism that is found in most lodge rituals. Make no mistake about it, any organization which utilizes this coffin ritual to simulate rebirth is practicing Satanism, including Skull and Bones. The Skull and Bones believes that on the night of initiation, the initiate dies to the world and is born again into the order. That's Esquire magazine, September 1977, page 89. Remember Hitler's belief that he had been born anew after his ritualistic initiation and training. That's from an article that I don't have copied here. You can see that from the online source. This term is a common one in occultism. During the 1988 presidential campaign, a TV reporter asked Vice President Bush if he were a Christian. Bush initially stammered, but then said, "If you mean born again, then yes, I am a Christian." See how the double play on words here? As born-again Christians carry out the ritual of water baptism by immersion to demonstrate that they have died to the old way of life and have been reborn into a new life, so also the occultists have their ritual to demonstrate the same life transformation. Rosenbaum continues his expose of the born-again experience when he says, quote, "Then it's into the coffin and off on a symbolic journey through the underworld to rebirth, which takes place in a room number 322. Oh, wow. 322. I have just got to stop here because something just occurred to me. Wow. 322 was the time on the East Coast that the December 21st, 2010, blood red moon lunar eclipse appeared over the shoulder of Orion for 72 minutes. It happened at 222 here at Dallas time, which was 322 Eastern Standard Time. Unbelievable. Folks, this is really important. You've got to pay attention to this. God put signs in the heavens for our benefit. I'm going to get to that lunar eclipse towards the end of this blog, but I just have to pause here because that 322 just literally jumped off the page that I wrote a few weeks ago. Anyway, there, the order clothes the newborn knight in its own special garments, implying that henceforth he will tailor himself to the order's mission. And that's again from the same source, page 89 and 148. This ritual description is as occult as any I have read and truly reveals the skull and bones as occultic. One of the most sobering facts of this counterfeit born-again initiation ritual is that the initiate swears to an allegiance to the secret order that transcends any allegiance later in life. Christian author Bill Cooper captures this disturbing fact most succinctly when he says, quote, "Members of the order," that's Skull and Bones, "take an oath that absolves them from any allegiance to any nation or king or government or constitution that includes the negating of any subsequent oath which they may be required to take. They swear allegiance only to the order and its goals of a new world order. According to the oath Bush took when he was initiated into Skull and Bones, his oath of office as President of the United States means nothing. That would therefore carry forward also to George W. Bush, Jr." Cooper, that's his quote from Behold a Pale Horse, page 81 and 82. Since the oath as President occurred after the oath to Skull and Bones, it is not worth the paper on which it is printed. That kind of hold is powerful. Indeed, as Ron Rosenbaum began the research necessary to write his article for Esquire, he was warned about the power of Skull and Bones. The power of Bones is incredible. They have their hands on every level of power in the country. I've got there a chart on this webpage shows the basic Illuminati structure and its relation to cooperating satanic bodies. And there you can see a whole bunch of other institutions and organizations that are out there that are all part of this same system. They all have a specific duty and purpose to perform. Skull and Bones is in the middle rank of these different secret societies that are all part of the Illuminati basic structure. And this article that I'm quoting here goes on to say, the only thing which is important to the Skull and Bones is their goal of a new world order. In conjunction with this understanding, remember one other secret society belief, i.e., the ends justify the means. Lie, deceit, manipulation, satanic, sexual rituals. Do any of these sound like the fruits we should identify as Christian? So when our world leaders get out there and say, "Oh, yeah, I'm a Christian," and we all vote for them, look at their fruits. These are not the fruits of somebody that we would call a Christian. No, these are the fruits of the devil. One major characteristic of the spirit of Antichrist is the tendency to exalt oneself above all that is God. Now we have a president who both thinks he is some sort of God and a press that is all too happy to picture him as such. And there's a link there for you to check out for a whole bunch of pictures that show Obama essentially as a messianic type character. The man has literally been hailed as a Messiah by both Christians and non-Christians alike. and especially amongst Muslims. On February 24th, 2008, addressing the Nation of Islam's Savior's Day, even the Islamic leader Louis Farrakhan said, quote, "When Obama talks, the Messiah is absolutely speaking," end quote. The world has certainly embraced this man. Therefore, we must pause here for a moment and discuss President Barack Hussein Obama, for he also has an interesting connection to the number 72 worth looking into. Consider the strange, cryptic comment he made after his first 100 days in office. He said, "Finally, I believe that my next 100 days will be so successful, I will be able to complete them in 72 days. And on the 73rd day, I will rest." Now, you can click on the YouTube video I have there that shows him giving that speech. Now, he gave that, what's that all about? I say, sure, he said those words at the first White House Correspondents' Dinner as a joke. You can see that he's clearly being pretty jovial with the crowd there, and he's kind of joking and stuff. But I question, is it really a joke? We will look more into that statement shortly after we take notice of a previous statement he made at that same dinner.
President Obama going for laughs at his first ever White House Correspondents' Dinner. 24-Hour News 8's Avi Forstein put together some of the best highlights from the comedian-in-chief.
I am Barack Obama. Most of you covered me. All of you voted for me. Apologies to the Fox table. They're early. Now, Sasha and Malia aren't here tonight because they're grounded. You can't just take Air Force One on a joyride to Manhattan. I don't care whose kids you are. It's been a whirlwind of activity these first 100 days. We've enacted a major economic recovery package. We passed a budget. Just last week, Car and Driver named me Auto Executive of the Year. Something I'm very proud of. And of course, we've also begun to change America's image in the world. There I am with Gordon Brown. But as I said during the campaign, we can't just talk to our friends. As hard as it is, we also have to talk to our enemies. And I've begun to do exactly that. Take a look at the monitor there. Now, let me be clear. Just because he handed me a copy of Peter Pan does not mean that I'm going to read it. But in the next 100 days, I will learn to go off the prompter, and Joe Biden will learn to stay on the prompter. Finally, I believe that my next 100 days will be so successful, I will be able to complete them in 72 days. And on the 73rd day, I will rest.
Earlier in his speech, and I've got the time code there, 43 through 48 in the video, he referred to his first 100 days as a whirlwind of activity. Did you know that George W. Bush used that same term, whirlwind, in his acceptance speech? So what? Remember, symbols and codes are how the illumined ones love to communicate. In Tom Horn's online article titled "Summoning the Angel Up from the Whirlwind," and there's a link there for you to check out the Tom Horn article, he writes, on January 20th, 2001, President George W. Bush, during his first inaugural address, faced the obelisk known as the Washington Monument and twice referred to an angel that, quote, rides in the whirlwind and directs the storm, end quote. Now, keep in mind, this was before 9/11. His reference was credited to Virginia statesman John Page, who wrote to Thomas Jefferson after the Declaration of Independence was signed, saying, quote, "We know the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. Do you not think an angel rides in the whirlwind and directs this storm?" End quote. 5 weeks after the inaugural, on Wednesday, February 28th, Congressman Major R. Owens of New York stood before the House of Representatives and prayed to the angel in the whirlwind. He asked the spiritual force to guide the future and fate of the United States. 28 weeks later, for a total of 33 weeks from the inaugural, a number of valuable to mysticism and occult fraternities, 19 Islamic terrorists, according to the official story, attacked the United States, hijacking 4 commercial airliners and crashing 2 of them into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, a 3rd into the Pentagon, and a 4th, which had been directed toward Washington, D.C., crashed near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. What happened that day resulted in nearly 3,000 immediate deaths, at least 24 missing persons, and the stage being set for changes to the existing world order. You know, again, I got to pause here, even as I'm reading this and having more revelation. I'm studying the book of Exodus right now, and you'll notice that after Moses was up on top of the mountain and receiving the 10 Commandments, and he came down and saw the people worshiping what? A golden calf, which represents the sun gods. Okay? That's all related to sun god worship, Baal worship. What happened? 3,000 people were killed as a result of that heresy. God had 3,000 killed. In the book of Acts, 3,000 people came into the body of Christ as a result of Peter preaching on the day of Pentecost. So 3,000 people were redeemed by the Holy Spirit. And now we've got 3,000 people dying in the name of the occult again. How crazy is that? All these things are significant, guys. You got to pay attention to the numbers because the Illuminati and indeed God, it's like as L.A. Marzulli says, it's a cosmic chess match. You know, God makes a move, the devil makes a move. The devil makes a move, God makes a move. It's move and counter move. So you really have to pay attention to the numbers. Okay, back to Tom Horn's article. He writes, when Bush was giving his second inaugural speech 4 years later, he again offered cryptic commentary saying, for a half century, America defended our own freedom by standing watch on distant borders. After the shipwreck of communism came years of relative quiet, years of repose, years of sabbatical. And then there came a day of fire. A few paragraphs following, Bush added, by our efforts, we have lit a fire as well, a fire in the minds of men. Keep this phrase in mind when you read my Riders on the Storm blog, which will be coming soon. Bush goes on to say, it warms those who feel its power. It burns those who fight its progress. And one day, this untamed fire of freedom will reach the darkest corners of our world. That's where Bush finishes his little speech. And Tom Horn continues, the phrase a fire in the minds of men is from Fyodor Dostoevsky's 19th century book, The Possessed, which means the devils, a novel set in pre-revolutionary Russia where civilian resistance is seen championed by nihilist Sergei Nechayev, who tries to ignite a revolution of such destructive power that society will be completely destroyed. The fact that a United States president would quote this phrase in an official speech of record was astonishing to many analysts, given that The Possessed is about violent government crackdown on dissidents that sparked civil unrest and revolution sparked by public violence. Fire in the Minds of Men is also the title that historian James H. Billington chose for his famous book on the story of revolutions, including the origin of occult Freemasonry and its influence in the American Revolution. In his closing comments, Bush himself tied the inaugural crypticisms to the Masonic involvement in the American Revolution, saying, quote, when our founding fathers declared a new order of the ages, they were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled, end quote. The phrase, a new order of the ages, is taken from the Masonically designed Great Seal, the Novus Ordo Seclorum. And Bush further acknowledged that the secret society members were acting on an ancient hope that is, quote, meant to be fulfilled, end quote. See how the Illuminati, see how the secret societies are constantly pushing forward their agenda, and they're doing it right in front of us, right in front of our faces. They say these little things in their inaugural speeches, and we just let it go. Oh, yeah, nice speech. Really, they're telegraphing their plans, constantly pushing us towards a new world order, which is really nothing new. It's the old order created by Nimrod at the Tower of Babel. Now, I could easily write a book on the fraud of 9/11, and you can click on a link there. It'll take you to a whole bunch of stuff dealing with that if that's new to you. But that's not my intent with this work. For now, I primarily want to focus on our secret society-loving presidents and the cryptic ways in which they love to communicate with each other right in front of us. So what are they communicating? Mr. Horn goes on to write, he says, invitation to angels by elected officials combined with passive civilian conformity is key to opening doorways for supernatural agents to engage social governance. This is a classic tenet of demonology. Spirits go where they are invited, whether to possess an individual or to take dominion over a region. One could contend, therefore, that starting in 2001, the United States became so disposed to following and not challenging unprecedented changes to long-standing U.S. policies, including the Christian rules for a just war, that a powerful force known to the Illuminati as the Mariah conquering wind, also known as the angel in the whirlwind, accepted the administration's invitation and enthroned itself in the nation's capital. Immediately after, it cast its eyes on the ancient home of the Babylon, where the coveted gate of the Ili had opened once before. Despite a series of ever-changing explanations as to why George W. Bush was stubbornly resolved in taking the U.S. into Iraq Babylon, the home of the Edamanic, whatever, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, house of the foundation of the heaven of the earth, the Tower of Babel, even though Iraq was not connected to the so-called events of September 11, 2001, years later, if you asked a room full of 20 analysts to define what was the true nature behind the United States entering the war, you would probably receive 20 different answers. Because anybody who is not part of this elite system and this plan, this secret society plan for the New World Order, nobody's going to have a clue what's going on unless you're a part of that. Or unless you take the time, as Tom Horn and so many others, and now myself, that we are taking the time to research this for ourselves, and I highly encourage you to do the same. If you do, you will see pretty plainly exactly what these people are trying to do. I've got a link here. It says, watch Tom Horn talk about all of this during his lecture at a Radio Liberty conference in 2009. In the following series of videos, he does a great job of revealing the many numbers that are associated with September 11, 2001. He goes on to give much more information, further explaining the nation's great seal and our government's love for Osiris Nimrod. And if you look on that YouTube playlist there, and it depicts Tom Horn talking about all of this. Now, please allow me a moment to pause here and say that I have a great deal of respect for Mr. Thomas Horn. I've met the man and have spent time with him and his family. Both my wife and I have gone to dinner with him and spent quite a bit of time with he and his family. Mr. Horn comes from a strong pastoral background, but as a researcher, he can no longer keep quiet about the things he was seeing, learning, and discovering concerning our nation, its founders, and the ultimate agenda they appear to be supporting. I ask that you please pray for him. He has truly become a watchman on the tower and has come under fire, literally, as a result. On January 4th, 2011, his home was set on fire while he and his family were inside. And there's a picture right there depicting Tom Horn's house on fire. All indications are that this was intentional arson. On the night of January 6, 2011, Steve Quayle, who is also a good friend of Tom Horn's, was on the radio with George Norrie on Coast to Coast AM. He said that the fire was suspicious and that it came at the house from all sides. All of Tom Horn's possessions and research material were destroyed. Steve seemed to imply that the fire was a severe warning to him being Tom Horn, to cease and desist with his work. Tom Horn, Steve Quayle, and a lot of others have publicly spoken out against the Luciferian system for years and have been attacked for doing so. And now I am speaking out as well. People are listening and beginning to wake up. The elite don't like that. But these are urgent times we are living in. What is coming is very serious. The watchmen are needed to sound the alarm so that the people do wake up. So please keep people like Tom Horn, Steve Quayle, L.A. Marzulli, Gary Stearman, Russ Dizdar, Doug Riggs, Jim Wilhelmson, King Wells, Richard Grunn, David Hester, Dave Ruffino, Dante Fortson, Chuck Missler, Dr. I.D. Thomas, Peter Goodgame, Sue Bradley, Derek and Sharon Gilbert, Stacy Harp, Shannon Davis, myself, and many, many others in your prayers. In short, please pray for all of the watchmen on the wall. For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, though that sometimes happens too. but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. That, of course, is Ephesians 6:12, the New Living Translation. Back to the new presidential Messiah's cryptic joke about completing his second 100 days in 72 days and then resting on his 73rd day. I think we need to look deeper into that. What was really being said there? And if he was just joking, of all the numbers he could have chosen, why did he pick 72? Why not complete them in 68 days or 81 days? There has to be significance to this very specific choice of the number 72. And there certainly is. During his first 100 days, he sure didn't waste much time, quote, remaking America, end quote. There's a link for you to see what that means. In less than a month in office, he signed the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, the $787 billion economic stimulus package enacted by the 111th Congress, 111. What's also interesting about this is that he signed the $787 billion bailout bill in Denver, Colorado, rather than in the Oval Office of the White House. Why did he push so urgently for this bill, only to delay its signing just so that he could do it in Denver on February 17th, which is a date important to the New World Order? One source suggests February 17, 2009 falls upon one of the most important Illuminati astrological signs of great changes with a conjunction of Mars and Jupiter, in which in its most simplistic sense means with the conjunction of Mars and Jupiter, you have an abundance of energy and enthusiasm to take on tasks that would frighten all but the most courageous. There are a couple of links there for you to check out to see more about what that's dealing with. On his 72nd day in office, President Obama met with the leaders of China, Russia, and Britain while in London for the G20 summit. It was one of his busiest days thus far, one that included everything from reopening talks on nuclear disarmament with Russia to giving the Queen of England an iPod. On April 2nd, which was day 73 of his first 100 days, President Obama was resting at the G20 summit, apparently endorsing the commitment of another $1.1 trillion in additional loans and guarantees to finance trade and bail out troubled countries. Meanwhile, in public opinion polls, people were asking, should Obama control the internet? The Brits were freaking out because Michelle Obama had embraced the Queen of England, and the president's bowing to the Saudi king had raised a lot of eyebrows. Now, the 100th day of Obama's presidency was April 29th, 2009. 72 days added to that brings us to July 10th, 2009. Obama said that he intended to rest from his creative labors on that Saturday. Now, of course, Saturday is the seventh day of the week, the day Scripture calls the Sabbath. So the biblical inference of Obama comparing himself to God is, I think, much more than a coincidence. As stated above, this is not a foreign concept concerning our presidents. But Obama does not even appear to be concerned with concealing this idea anymore. Listen to Tom Horn and Steve Quayle talk about this in the following video. Pay attention to what is said in the second video about Egyptian beliefs, especially those concerning the pharaohs and Osiris. And there's a YouTube video there. It has two videos you can watch. Each are about 10 to 12 minutes long. The date, July 11, 2009, is the date of Obama's 73rd day of rest. And that's in the second 100th day period of his presidency. It is a significant date for the reasons stated above, but more importantly because it is the first of 1,260 days, or 42 months, an amount of time that should be familiar to most students of prophecy. From July 10th, 2009 to December 21st, 2012. So just what exactly did Obama finally accomplish on the 172nd day of his presidency that he should rest on the 173rd day, the day that would set up the next 42 months of the big date everyone is talking about? He certainly accomplished a lot up to that point, with some very strange responses from the people and leaders of other nations along the way. The closer we got to July 11th, the stranger things became. I suppose a 1,000-page book could easily be written exploring all the strangeness surrounding this unique God president named Barack Hussein Obama. Seriously, the more you look into this man and the world's response to him, the weirder things get. Take this picture, for instance. And I've got a picture there showing a vendor holding a metal plaque that has a picture of King Tut at the top of it, and below it says, Obama, the new Tutankhamun of the world, and then some Egyptian hieroglyphs down below. The new Tutankhamun of the world? What the heck is that all about? When has such a thing ever happened to a head of state? Our president was called a pharaoh, someone who is considered to be the son of the sun god, Ra. Another online source says regarding the same deal, he says a souvenir shop owner displays a recently made metal plaque for sale to tourists reading, Obama, new Tutankhamun of the world. In the Khan el Khalili market area of Cairo, Egypt, that was on Thursday, May 28, 2009, ahead of President Obama's planned June 4th speech in Cairo on U.S. relations with the Muslim world. The sign refers to Tutankhamun, who was one of the last pharaohs of Egypt's 18th dynasty and who ruled during a crucial, turmoil-filled period in Egyptian history. Hieroglyphics at the base of the plaque were claimed by the vendor to spell the name Obama. Notice, of all the pharaohs, he was referred to as the new Tutankhamun. Now, Wikipedia says that Tutankhamun was an Egyptian pharaoh of the 18th dynasty during the period of Egyptian history known as the New Kingdom. Tutankhamun was born to Akhenaten, who was also a very, very strange character. One of the things Akhenaten was most known for was the turning of Egypt into a monotheistic form of worship. So prior to Tutankhamun, Egypt worshipped one god. Keep that in mind. Wikipedia goes on to state, concerning King Tut's significance, it says that Tutankhamun was one of the few kings worshipped as a god and honored with a cult-like following in his own lifetime. A stela discovered at Karnak and dedicated to Amun-Ra and Tutankhamun indicates that the king could be appealed to in his deified state for forgiveness and to free the petitioner from an ailment caused by wrongdoing. Temples of his cult were built as far away as Kawa and Faras in Nubia. The title of the sister of the viceroy of Kush included a reference to the deified king indicative of the universality of his cult. Now, we can certainly see the parallels of Obama here. Never have I seen a U.S. president who came out of nowhere with next to no public record of note or even a real birth certificate, but that's another story. And yet the man is essentially worshipped all around the world. And don't forget, this was just within the guy's first 200 days in office. But the thing I really want to point out concerning the comparison of Obama to that particular pharaoh is the fact that King Tut brought back the worship of the old gods. There's a link for you to check out there. And ushered in the New Kingdom era of Egypt. Could that be Obama's purpose at this point in history as well? To usher in the New World Order and its worship of the old gods of antiquity? Remember that the apostasy spoken of by the Apostle Paul in the New Testament refers to a falling away from the true faith before the Antichrist is revealed. There's a quote here from 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 3 and 4 in the King James Version, which says, Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he, as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. In the third blog of this series, I made the case that I believe a resurrected Nimrod time Antichrist. So I certainly don't believe Barack Hussein Obama is. But there is no shortage of commentary online where lots of people are making all sorts of connections to President Obama as being a very good candidate for the Antichrist. And I have to admit, I think a lot of the information out there is very compelling and quite interesting. Freaky, even. I've got a picture there at this point showing the seat of Satan, also known as the altar of Zeus. The above picture is the seat of Satan spoken of in Revelation 2, verses 12 through 13. This altar of Zeus has since been relocated from the Pergamum of the Bible to Berlin. Big surprise. Wikipedia states that in Berlin, Italian restorers reassembled the panels comprising the frieze with its thousands of fragments, which could be recovered. In order to display the result and create a context for it, a new museum was erected in 1901 on Berlin's Museum Island. As this first Pergamon museum proved to be both inadequate and structurally unsound, it was demolished in 1909 and replaced with the much larger present museum, which reopened in 1930. Although it housed a variety of collections, not least a famous reconstruction of the Ishtar Gate of ancient Babylon, the city's inhabitants also named the new museum the Pergamum Museum after the friezes and reconstruction of the west front of the altar. The Pergamum altar is today the most famous item in the Berlin collection of classical antiquities, which is on display in the Pergamum Museum and in the Atlas Museum, both on Museum Island. Now notice that the seat of Satan was moved to Berlin, Germany, just prior to World War I, and then it was relocated to a better facility prior to World War II and placed right alongside the Gate of Babylon. Is it any wonder that 2 world wars were started in Germany? Could it be the place where the final World War is launched as well? Time will tell, but it certainly appeared to be the place where Obama was launched. While on Obama's road to victory, he gave yet another change speech under Germany's famous Victory Column. Now, this was Hitler's favorite place for the Berlin Nazi rallies. And the sight of Obama standing arm outstretched in that all-too-familiar gesture below the pagan goddess Victoria, also known as Nike, is certainly chilling enough. But not nearly as scary as what happened at his acceptance speech at the Democratic National Convention held in where else? Denver, Colorado. Note that Obama's acceptance speech, the stage was modeled after the altar of Zeus. And you can see a picture there for yourself, that he built a facade, a stage that is meant to look just like the seat of Satan, the altar of Zeus. Now, one online source made the following observations. We are definitely on the road to a new world order. A one-world government, and Denver seems to play an important role in it, as will Germany and Turkey. Oh, the connections they run ever so deep. And while I did not think that Obama will turn out to be that man of lawlessness, especially after the Trojan horse word, I no longer rule out that possibility. Consider, 1, Obama occupies the most powerful post in the world, the U.S. president, by outright lies and an act of lawlessness since he entered the White House without proof of being an American citizen by birth. His supporters and campaign managers knowingly and wantonly disregarded this law of the United States and became partners in this act of lawlessness. 2, like Hitler, a true son of Satan, Obama chose to copy the Pergamum altar of Zeus as the backdrop for his acceptance speech. Hence, he knowingly chose the throne of Satan to be his podium, his image being projected onto that altar on its 2 sides. 3, Obama has opened a Pandora's box on stem cell research by legalizing it. The consequences of this cannot even yet be imagined. The possibilities of abuse and misuse of stem cell research are frightening. Whenever great discoveries have been made, there have always been wicked, greedy, and evil men who have misused and abused the discovery or invention. Albert Einstein's discovery of the splitting of the atom is just one such example. He never envisioned an atomic bomb. If he had, he would have kept his discovery secret. Number 4, Obama's first official interview as president was with Al Jazeera, the Arabic language news network, and his first official visit as president will be to Turkey, the land of the 7 churches and of the altar of Satan in Pergamum, Anatolia. Walid Shubat, former Palestinian terrorist who came to faith in Yeshua, is the author of 5 books on terrorism. In his book, God's War on Terror, he has something rather disturbing to say about Turkey and the end days. And I would say, yeah, we should definitely be paying attention, folks. Someone else presents the following on YouTube. Obama certainly appears to be playing a major role in these last days as some sort of Antichrist-like figure, though I maintain that he is not going to be the Antichrist. In addition, the author of the online blog where I found that video, he also made the following interesting observations. And this is quite interesting, especially to me since I am a filmmaker. Black presidents in movies. This is a quote from somebody else's website. He says, I want to bring to your mind the fact that many movies were made throughout the last few years before the past presidential election where the President of the United States was played by a black man. Some say it was preconditioning the people to accept the person the Illuminati set up. Some say it was coincidence, which I really call spiritual intervention, something that the dark powers are doing behind the curtains and in which man have no input but act purely as proxies for instruments for their spirits. I believe both to be a right answer. I cannot help but see a pattern in how many movies started coming out in the past 10 or 15 years, one after the other, in which the president has been a black actor. Even God was played by the actor Morgan Freeman in the movie Bruce Almighty, and he himself plays a black president in the movie Deep Impact, which has an apocalyptic connotation to it. I believe having the same actor playing these two roles is for a reason. There is a connection which the people paying Hollywood want to make. In the movie Idiocracy, actor Terry Crews plays President Camacho in a world where advertising, commercialism, and cultural anti-intellectualism take over the society, a world like today's, when you can open your eyes and disconnect from the Matrix, although, according to the movie, it is happening 500 years from now. Society, as they portray it, is what the Illuminati has envisioned for the New World Order to be. It is pitiful and obvious when you watch it. I think it is curious also how the president in charge when the New World Order was already going strong was a black president, just like the movie The Fifth Element, in which Bruce Willis works to save the planet from extinction, this happening while the president is also black. First, it is obvious that by showing for more than 10 years a black man in office in all these movies and TV programs, that the masses would consider electing a black president just because the actor was given a good script and the movie made him seem good. People were being subliminally prepared to elect Obama by been shown for so long that a black man belonged in the office. Second, there is a connection they constantly do in these movies, which they hope people will make subconsciously, and it is that a great percentage of these movies have something in common. Many times when there has been a black man as president, Earth has experienced apocalyptic events, as if people are supposed to expect possible human extinction happening, or in a specific case, the rapture, which is what goes on in the movie people don't mention that much when talking about this sort of subject, the Christian movie that came out of the best-selling book Left Behind, which also portrays a picture of a little apocalyptic dimensions right when the rapture occurs, while President of the United States is black. And that's Louis Gossett Jr. in that case. Lastly, there's a movie not even out yet at the time this person wrote this article, but that I'm sure started shooting before the election of Obama for presidency was official. The movie 2012 coming out this month, where Danny Glover plays president while a group of people are in a fight to counteract the depicted events that were predicted by the ancient Mayan calendar, which I have talked about in earlier posts, June 21st, this particular author says. I think all these should be something to think about. Now, there's also another link there that I put by the same author that you might want to check out. Note that even in the new TV series, The Event, a black man is president. This show appears to be about the coming event known as the Disclosure Project, and there's a link for you to check out regarding that. Now, let me state here that I am in no way, shape, or form a prejudiced man. I could care less what color a person's skin is. We all have red blood, and I believe all men are created equal. So I am not being racist here. I am merely pointing out, just as the author in the above blog did as well, that if we look at the movies and TV shows of the past 10 years or so, we have to acknowledge that there certainly does appear to have been a concerted effort on the part of the Illuminati's propaganda machine known as Hollywood to precondition the masses to the idea that a black U.S. president will be the one to keep us safe in these last days. And if you click that link to keep us safe, that's actually the name of one of the episodes of the TV series The Event. All of that seems to have prepped or brainwashed the people of this country and indeed the world to embrace President Obama as some sort of savior. And then, of course, there's the strange event that happened in Norway when President Obama got his Nobel Peace Prize. There's a picture there for you to check out regarding the Norwegian spiral. I've spent a lot of time looking into that strange spiral that appeared in the Norwegian sky on December 9th, 2009. And the one thing I can say is that it most certainly was not a missile. And it wasn't the only one to be seen either. Another showed up over the skies of Australia about 6 months later, and there were others as well. And you can click on, I got links to the one showing the spiral that showed up over Australia and another one that showed up over Asian country. Nearly every one of these sightings was followed by news reports attributing the phenomena to failed missiles. It's like, back in the 50s, every time in the 60s and even in the 70s, every time there's a UFO, it's weather balloons. And every time it's something weird, it's a failed missile. Well, first of all, if missiles are failing over major cities all over the world, that's a major problem, people. But I don't believe that's the explanation anyway. Missiles don't do what these things did. Simple as that. And when you combine that fact with the notion that ancient people were carving depictions of this exact same thing into the rocks and caves of the world, you have to acknowledge that this is a significant sign in the heavens that we should probably be paying attention to. And I've got a link for you to check out there that shows carvings in the rocks and caves of the world, showing that it looks just like it, a little spiral in the sky, and right below it, people running for their lives. So this is nothing new. These weird spiral things have happened before to people all over the planet, and they carved it in the rocks to prove it. UFO activity has also increased dramatically in 2010, especially over China. And there's a video there of a really strange and pretty wild-looking UFO that appeared on July 9th in China. There's another UFO that took place in China that shut down an airport for the whole day. A lot of weird things happened in China in 2010, UFO sightings. It is interesting that most of these strange heavenly signs started after Obama became president. So I agree that all of this is worth thinking about and carefully considering. But as I've already pointed out, he cannot be the Antichrist. I don't believe he is the false prophet either. We'll deal with him in the To Clone a Prophet blog, which I still need to put up. So what am I to make of the man? I will pursue this matter further in the Riders on the Storm blog. There I will tell you exactly who I think Obama is in the end-time list of characters and what I believe his role is as one of several forerunners sent to prepare the way, much like John the Baptist prepared the way for Jesus. Now, back to Obama's 72nd day of his second 100th in office. The day before he rested from his labors, on the evening of that last day, the president met with Pope Benedict and had private talks for about 40 minutes in the Vatican's Apostolic Palace. The Vatican said bioethics and life issues were a central part of the discussion. But considering the Pope had just 3 days earlier made some very interesting statements that seemed to advocate the New World Order, who knows what they really talked about. There's a link there for you to check out regarding what the Pope had to say about the New World Order. And there's also a video showing him saying these things where somebody has put subtitles in English for us to watch. I also find it very interesting that the Messianic Pharaoh God met with the Pope at the start of the 1260-day countdown to December 21st, 2012, especially when you consider which Pope Benedict is. According to St. Malachi's prophecy, the prophecy of the popes, and there's a link there that you can click on to read about the prophecy of the popes, Pope Benedict could be the one who immediately precedes the last pope, which I believe will be the false prophet, and usher in the last days. So it's almost like the Antichrist forerunner met with the false prophet forerunner. These are just some of the things that make you go, And there's a video there for you to check out concerning that. There is so much more that can be written about concerning the number 72 and its role in these last days, but this should be enough to lead you where we're headed. Needless to say, as you should be able to see by now, the number is very significant. On page 298 of Apollyon Rising 2012, Tom Horn ties all of this together and makes a startling observation when he says, the designers of the Capitol Dome, the Great Seal of the United States, and the obelisk of the Washington Monument, circled by the apotheosis of Washington with 72 stars, dedicated to the obelisk 72 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and placed the 72 stones of the Great Seal's uncapped pyramid, above which the Eye of Horus, Osiris, Apollo, which we also know is Nimrod, stares. These three sets of 72, combined with the imagery and occult numerology of the Osiris obelisk, which is a penis, the Isis dome, which is a womb, the oracular Great Seal, are richly symbolic of the influence of Satan and his angels over the world. See Luke 4, verses 5 and 6, and 2 Corinthians 4:4, and Ephesians 6:12. With a prophecy towards Satan's final earthly empire, the coming Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new golden pagan age. New golden pagan age? Yes, as I stated above, I believe that a big part of the Great Deception is going to be a falling away from faith in the one true God back to a belief in the old world pantheon of pagan deities, most of which will all represent the false god named Osiris, or, as we have seen, the God-man the Bible calls Nimrod. And I cannot help but wonder if that's why Obama's mantra, yes, we can, just so happens to sound remarkably like, thank you, Satan, when reversed. Now, note, I never really have been a big proponent of backmasking because I have seen people read into things way too much, especially as a kid when I was growing up listening to every traveling evangelist that came bashing rock music, playing it. It's fun to smoke marijuana and, kill your mother and all these things. Are playing all our rock music backwards, and we always had to have burning ceremonies where we burned our evil rock music. So I do, however, understand that there is truth to the use of this technique within occult circles. Therefore, I just present the following video clip for your criticism and or amusement. What I find most interesting about this video clip is how different the same words, yes we can, sound when coming from him than when it comes from the audience. So you can go ahead and click that little 21-second video there and watch Obama say yes we can, and somebody has reversed the audio.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Heck you say. Heck you say. Heck you say. Heck you say.
I've also done the same thing, so I can personally testify that this person didn't do anything weird with some kind of software. I've done the same thing for myself, and I would encourage you, if you know how to use that kind of software, go ahead and download this clip and do it for yourself. You'll see it. Nobody's tampered with it. Something else that I think is noteworthy involves the month of October 2008. Just 1 month before Barack Obama was elected as our president, the jackal-headed Egyptian god Anubis, who was believed to be the guide and protector of the dead, arrived in Atlanta, Georgia, to pave the way across the country for King Tut's treasures. In the context of all that I have been writing, doesn't that seem quite odd and rather peculiar? Probably just a coincidence, right? No, I don't think so. This is how TourEgypt.net describes Anubis. They say, Anubis is an incredibly ancient god and was the original god of the dead before Osiris took over the position. After that point, Anubis was charged to be one of the many sons of Osiris and the psychopather of soul of the underworld. His totem, the jackal, is probably due to the fact that jackals would hunt at the edges of the desert near the necropolis and the cemeteries throughout Egypt. Prayers to Anubis are found in the most ancient in Egypt. His duties apparently are many. He watches over the mummification process to ensure that it is all done properly. He conducts souls through the underworld, testing their knowledge of the gods and on the scales of justice during the judging of the heart, and he feeds the souls of wicked people to Anubis. You can check those links out for yourself and read more about Anubis. And so, this son of Osiris, this mummy overseer and conductor of the underworld, made his rounds across the country. In March of 2010, he even moved to Manhattan for some very telling photo ops. You can see the little photo op there with Anubis right across from another pagan symbol image, of course, the Statue of Liberty. By June of 2010, Anubis found his way to, wait for it, Denver International Airport. Ding, ding, ding. Wow. There, the exhibit was to run from June 29, 2010 through January 9, 2011, which incidentally is the day that I wrote that blog. It was said that Anubis will be standing guard during that time. Standing guard for what? Or for whom? Could it be that the plan to raise Osiris is taking place, and Anubis is being brought in to ensure it's all done properly, and that everyone is brushed up on their knowledge of the gods? Speaking of, just to be sure we know what's going on, apart from the boring exhibit that has been making its rounds for over a year now, they have also slated for young American audiences this year a new Nickelodeon TV series called House of Anubis. Well, we got to make sure the kiddos are exposed too, don't we? Is Pharaoh King Tut Obama preparing the theater for his future king? Now imagine Osiris Nimrod stepping back onto the world stage, backed by supernatural manifestations in the air and on the ground of the old gods of mythology. Think that's crazy? Keep reading. In closing this blog, I want to mention an event that took place in the heavens on December 21st, 2010, that also involves the number 72. This is the event that actually caused me to really take a hard look at all of the subjects I'm writing about here. In fact, it is what prompted me to write all of this in the first place. I'm talking about the total lunar eclipse that occurred on the winter solstice of 2010. Remember that in the book of Joshua, chapter 27, verses 1 through 12, it states that Nimrod was decapitated by Esau. Nearly every legend of the other incarnations of this individual depicts him meeting a horrible end as well. Whether you are talking about Osiris, Dionysus, Bacchus, or Mithra, you will find that decapitation, castration, mutilation, and the hacking into pieces of his body are all common descriptions of this man's death. He truly is the first Frankenstein monster, a mutilated dead man destined to rise again. On the blog, there is a image of the constellation Orion. It's a high-definition picture. And if you click on that picture, it will enlarge, and you can see it in more detail. And I make note of the fact that even the constellation of Orion, as seen here in HD through a high-powered telescope, looks like a massacred body sitting out there in space. And click on the picture to the left to see it enlarged, and notice that the area where the head is, look at that area where the head is. It looks like a bloody mess, like some sort of cosmic roadkill hanging out there in the cosmos. On December 21st, 2010, an extraordinary event took place. There was a total lunar eclipse on the night of the winter solstice, the time when the sun symbolically dies, and we have the darkest days of the year. This happened exactly 2 years away from the infamous date of December 21st, 2012. That is significant in and of itself, but what I found to be even more extraordinary was the time, the timing, and the location of the moon that night. The moon turned blood red while in full eclipse at 2:22 a.m. Central Standard Time, as viewed from the 33rd parallel here in Dallas, Texas, for a total of 72 minutes. And it did so right above the shoulders of Orion, in front of Taurus, between Orion's club and the horns of the bull. All I could say was, wow. That is nothing short of absolutely amazing. In other words, the moon literally appeared as a blood-red, decapitated head floating above the shoulders of Orion, Osiris, Gilgamesh, Mithra, Apollo, Nimrod. Is this a sign of the times? I have a picture there that shows where the moon was in relation to all this in the constellation above Orion and right next to the horns of Taurus the bull. Note that this particular eclipse was really only viewable over the United States, the place many scholars like to refer to as spiritual Babylon. It should also be noted that at 2:22 a.m. Central Time, that was 3:22 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which of course is the time zone for the East Coast where Washington, D.C. is. Remember what we learned about secret societies earlier? Is it a coincidence that this very specific sign in the heavens that just so happens to have numerous meanings directly related to Osiris, Orion, Gilgamesh, Nimrod, also happened at a time directly related to a number that is prominently displayed on the Skull and Bones iconography? And I've got a picture there showing the symbol for the Skull and Bones Secret Society. And I say, note the numbers 322 depicted below a decapitated skull, no less, keeping in mind that this sign in the heavens happened at 3:22 a.m. as viewed from Washington, D.C. Again, let me remind you about several of the significant bullet points I mentioned above concerning the number 72. And I listed some of the ones that I had in bold at the very beginning of this blog, which were the mass of the moon is 1/72 of that of the Earth. The axis of the Earth moves 1 degree every 72 years compared to the stars. The number of devils according to the Lesser Key of Solomon. The god Osiris was enclosed in a coffin by 72 evil disciples and accomplices of Set. There are 72 goetic demons. South of Egyptian mythology wins a 72nd of each day of the year from the moon in a game of droughts, as a favor to Nut, the sky goddess. He uses these portions to make the 5 intercalary days on which the remaining gods and goddesses are born. So, our moon, which is 1/72, the mass of the Earth, appeared over Osiris, Orion, Nimrod's shoulders like a decapitated head for 72 minutes. Osiris is intimately related to both the number 72 as well as the year 2012. Egyptian mythology spells out the procession of the stars that lead to December 21st, 2012. President Obama, who has been referred to as an Egyptian pharaoh and who was heralded by Anubis, no less, before giving an acceptance speech in front of a replica of the seat of Satan, is also intimately connected to both the number 72 as well as the date December 21st, 2012. Considering all of the demonic symbolism and meanings that are found in all of this, I think it is also pertinent to note that the time 3:33 a.m., which was only a few minutes later, is known as the witching hour, the time of demons, the time when a lot of so-called alien abductions are said to take place. The moon was deep red by this time, and I believe all of this is very significant and should be taken into consideration, especially considering the fact that this sign appeared over the United States of America, another entity directly related to all of the above. This cannot be a good thing. But I think all of this makes perfect sense when you consider that Bonesman, Daddy, and Junior Bush, what they did in Iraq and what President, or I should say Pharaoh, Obama is doing now to bring about some major prophetic events. So I do not believe that it is merely by chance that God placed this sign above America at this specific time in history. And we would do well to heed the sign and all of the warnings contained within it. God himself said that the stars, sun, and moon are to be for signs and for seasons. Genesis 1:14. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. In the Bible, the zodiac was referred to as Mazzaroth. God uses the signs in the heavens to show us things. And throughout history, blood red moons have typically been a sign of usually bad things to come. The last time we had a similar blood moon lunar eclipse was on February 20th, 2008, at about 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. It took place in the constellation Leo, right between Regulus and Saturn, and I've got an image there for you to check out what that alignment looked like. This is what Wikipedia has to say about Saturn. Keep in mind also that Regulus is considered the king star and Leo the king constellation. This is what Wikipedia has to say. In Babylon, he was called Ninib and was an agricultural deity. Saturn, called Kronos by the Greeks, was at the dawn of the ages of the gods, the protector and sower of the seed. And his wife, Ops, called Rhea by the Greeks, was a harvest helper. Not long after February 2008, the red moon eclipse of that date, the economy began to collapse, and the seeds for a coming New World Order were sown, paving the way for the dawn of the ages of the gods to be ushered in by the new, soon-to-be-appointed Pharaoh president who would take us the rest of the way. The aftermath of the 2008 eclipse wasn't so good for America. So what are we to make of the signs given on the night of December 21st, 2010? Without making any direct conclusions, I will just throw these other interesting observations into the mix for your consideration. At the same time that was taking place, Jupiter and Uranus were in conjunction with each other that night as well. Jupiter, or Zeus, representing the king of the gods, Lucifer, and Uranus representing the heavens. Also, the sun was in Sagittarius, the animal-human hybrid with a bow and arrow, also accompanied by Mars, the god of war, and Mercury, the messenger of the gods. Saturn, the Titan father of the Olympian gods, is in the belly of Virgo. I could read an awful lot into these signs, but I'll just leave it to the experts. Meanwhile, elsewhere on planet Earth, earthquakes rocked the entire planet, killing many people as an appropriate response to. North and South Korea continued to make rumblings of war. A missile was fired from the Gaza Strip into southern Israel, making Israel answer back. And Iraq announced that it has finally formed its new government, just in time for the floating head of Orion, Osiris, to begin making its descent onto their former leader's shoulders. And I've got a video there, a YouTube video on the page. If you check that out, somebody had taken the time and made the observation that seismographs and organizations that monitor earthquake activity all around the world, these graphs went off like crazy on the night of December 21st, 2010, during that blood red moon lunar eclipse.
You can look it up for yourself. 72 minutes. 2:22 in the morning, Texas time, Central Standard Time, is 3:22 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. Skull and bones. What is that? A decapitated head on a pile of bones. Very interesting. At that moment, in Iraq, they had just announced they had fully formed their government. While this is going on here at night, it's daytime there, they had announced their fully formed government. And the whole planet shook. There are internet seismographic monitors that check the earthquakes around the world. They all started going crazy that night. The earth shook. Iraq announced its new government, and a decapitated head floated like a blood-red moon for 72 minutes over the shoulders of Orion.
Today is December 21st, Tuesday, 2010 at 6:13 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we are looking at the live internet seismic server, which is still recording a gigantic earth movement at all stations around the world. Now, this began last night at approximately 1 to 2 hours before the eclipse. And originally, I thought this may be a signature from the Iran earthquake that happened yesterday, which was a 6.5 on the Richter. However, it continued all night, and into today with a crescendo in Japan of a 7.4. And now, as of, and I'll just click on any one of these, I mean, all shaking through the roof, but we'll just click on Norway's, let's say. And as of 23:47 Greenwich Mean Time, we still have a gigantic disturbance happening. And this is not the Japan disturbance. This is some other anomaly that is showing up all around the world. I have never seen anything like this in the time that I've looked at this data set. I mean, in Arizona, it's showing just off the chart. The evidence speaks for itself. And you can see the date timestamp, 12/21/2010, 16:49 Mountain Standard Time, which is 23:49 Greenwich Mean Time. So, just to prove that this is not showing up, and are either censoring this data or it's some other kind of anomaly, is the current USGS World Global readout of earthquakes. And within the last hour, we've had a 5.1 aftershock in Japan, which any geologist would be able to tell you. If you want to go back and look at prior data, you can see that a 5.1 does not show up as a huge off-the-chart earthquake all around the world at all the heliographs around the world.
I looked up and I sent an email to Tom Horn and a few others. I'm like, something's going on here. And you can write this down, Stellarium, STELLARIUM.org, stellarium.org. There's a free software that you can download that allows you to track the movement of planets and stars, and you can look at current or future or past, look all over the place. There's an extremely interesting alignment that takes place on September 11th, 2 BC. The alignment of September 11th, 2 BC is virtually identical to the description given in Revelation of the woman who's clothed with the sun, with the moon at her feet and 12 stars at her head. And 3 kings line up right there too. You get the king planet, which is Jupiter, lines up over the king star, which is Regulus, in the king constellation of Leo. King, 3 kings, perfect description of what Revelation says, the woman clothed with the sun. I believe that's what the Magi saw in 2 BC. If that's true, and I don't know if that's the birth of Jesus, the conception of Jesus, or when he was 2 years old and the Magi showed up, I don't know when it is. But if it's true and it's somewhere in the ballpark of his birth, then that could mean that our calendars are off by 2 years. Everybody's talking about December 21st, 2012. I submit that something pretty extraordinary happened to December 21st, 2010, 2 years off from that date.
So the whole earth literally shook. Lots of people were killed in Japan, and I believe it was in Iran and elsewhere. So this was an extremely significant event that night. But I do want to draw your attention to the last bullet point there, that at the same time that Nimrod/Gilgamesh/Orion, Osiris, at the same time as the decapitated head was floating over the shoulders of Orion, the Iraqi government was announcing that it had finally fully formed for the first time since the government was toppled by who? The United States of America in 2003. And I've got a link there and a quote from that link, from that website. It says, the government, headed by Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, a Shiite, was approved unanimously in Baghdad on Tuesday, ending 9 months of political gridlock that had Washington fearing fresh political turmoil as U.S. forces continue their Iraq pullout. Needless to say, the event of December 21st, 2010's blood red moon eclipse, rising for 72 minutes over Orion Osiris on the day of Iraq's rebirth, Nimrod's New Babylon, is very significant.
And I have an update here to this blog that was posted after I initially did this recording. Some more things came to light. Some more extremely significant signs have happened, or shall I say, changed, since I finished writing this blog. A bunch of news articles have recently come out stating things like, the tilt of the Earth's axis has gradually shifted since the ancient times when the Babylonians determined the dates of the zodiac. The calendrical rejiggering also supposedly reintroduced a sign discarded by the Babylonians, Ophiuchus, alternatively called the much cooler-sounding Serpentarius. Those zodiac signs you were born into are different now because the Earth's wobble on its axis has created a 1-month bump in the alignment of the stars, according to astronomer Park Kunkel. Because of this change of tilt, the Earth is really over here in effect, and the Sun is in a different constellation than it was 3,000 years ago. And I've got a video there from a news report you can check out when they're talking about the new addition to the zodiac, the new sign.
After nearly 9 years, our war in Iraq ends this month. Today I'm proud to welcome Prime Minister Maliki, the elected leader of a sovereign, self-reliant, and democratic Iraq. In the coming years, it's estimated that Iraq's economy will grow even faster than China's or India's.
Here's my dinars. I got them.
Well, you know, look,
Come from the Trade Bank of Iraq, the only ATM in the country.
Look, this is a country that's resource-based, that obviously has tremendous aid by the U.S., but could be very self-sufficient with all these oil companies that we've been talking about that are exploring, they're about to explore there. And so I told my viewer, look, I can't fight it. I would like to know how best to get it, and it would really be great if these guys set up these ETFs all the time. How about an ETF to play the dinar? That would really be the best way to go.
For the first time in 2 decades, Iraq is scheduled to host the next Arab League summit, and what a powerful message that will send throughout the Arab world. And finally, we're partnering for regional security. For just as Iraq has pledged not to interfere in other nations must not interfere in Iraq. Iraq's sovereignty must be respected. And let us never forget those who gave us this chance. The untold number of Iraqis who've given their lives. More than 1 million Americans, military and civilian, who have served in Iraq. Nearly 4,500 fallen Americans who gave their last full measure of devotion. Tens of thousands of wounded warriors, and so many inspiring military families.
People ask me, are we making Iraq safe for the Antichrist or safe for democracy? And it's a little bit of both.
This is an extraordinary achievement. Nearly 9 years in the making. We're building a new partnership between our nations.
America continues to maintain a high presence in the country, with the largest U.S. embassy in the world located in the capital Baghdad, with 15,000 members of staff.
Before they leave, U.S. forces will have to transfer dozens of bases to the Iraqis and dispose of or ship out thousands of vehicles.
Sometimes it's too cumbersome to bring a lot of this equipment back to the U.S., so a lot of it's left on bases. We're leaving over 500 military bases to the Iraqis, both to the Iraqi security forces and also to the government.
This is a happy occasion for all of us. It is considered one of the most important days for the Iraqi army and Iraqis, which is the day of handing over Sania base from the friendly side to the Iraqi army.
Your zodiac sign was determined by Babylonians based on what constellation the sun was in on the day you were born. But astronomers at the Minnesota Planetarium Society point out things have changed over thousands of years. The Earth has shifted on its axis and shifted us up one sign on the zodiac wheel.
Right between November 29th and December 17th, there is a new sign. It is Ophiuchus. The constellation is a dude wrestling a snake.
Birds, fish, and all kinds of creatures just dropping dead. 8,000 dead turtle doves in Italy. Hundreds of birds dead in Rockwell, Texas. 500 red-winged blackbirds in Louisiana. 3,000 dead red-winged blackbirds in Arkansas. Several hundred dead in Kentucky. On the fish, several hundred snapper fish in New Zealand. Thousands of dead fish in Florida. 40,000 devil crabs in the UK. 80,000 drumfish in Arkansas. 2 million spot croakers in Maryland. In the last 2 weeks. This is all a sign of the apocalypse.
How interesting that right after this red moon rising event, there was all sorts of talk about the Earth's new, quote, pole shift, end quote, And then hundreds of thousands of birds started to fall from the sky, and millions of dead fish started to wash up on beaches. Now we have a 13th sign of the zodiac. But what is most interesting to me is the sign they added, Ophiuchus. What's so big about that? Ophiuchus is also known as the serpent handler, and Asclepius, the god of healing. Also of extreme interest, he was the son of Apollo, yet another name for Nimrod. But wait, there's more. According to the mythology, Asclepius was given the power to restore the dead back to life. And it is said that one of the individuals he restored to life was the great hunter Orion, Nimrod. In fact, according to the story, Asclepius was restoring so many people back to life that the realm of the dead was becoming depopulated. And I've got a quote here. It says, Hades, the god of the underworld, whom the Romans knew as Pluto, complained to Zeus about the loss of the dead. Every day, Hades had fewer and fewer subjects over whom to rule. So in response to the pleas of Hades, Zeus struck down Asclepius with a thunderbolt. Apollo was infuriated by the slaying of his son and took revenge by slaying the 3 one-eyed beings called Cyclops who forged Zeus's thunderbolts. So to appease the anger of Apollo, Zeus revived Asclepius and set him in the sky as the constellation Ophiuchus. The serpent wrestler is a symbol of health and healing because of the connection with the serpent, which was a symbol of rebirth in the classical culture. It was thought that the serpent was reborn when it shed its skin each spring. How incredibly appropriate. Our new zodiac sign is that of the one who uses the power of the serpent to heal and raise both Orion, Osiris, Nimrod, and release those who were dead in Hades. This sure puts Jesus' little discussion with Peter in Caesarea Philippi into a whole new light. You know, the part where Peter replied to the Lord's question of, who do men say that I am? By saying that he was the Messiah, the Son of the living God, to which Jesus replied, Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. That's from Matthew 16, verses 15 through 19 in the NIV version. I'm thinking we're going to have to truly understand what is being said here. And this whole binding and loosing deal, yeah, we're going to need to know how to do that too, because, as Jesus said, there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress among nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. Men's hearts will fail them for fear, and for looking upon those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken, and then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And when these things shall begin to come to pass, then look up, and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. That's Luke 21, verses 25 through 28 in the King James Version. Notice Jesus said, and then, meaning after these things begin to come to pass. We should start to look up, because our redemption draweth nigh. That says to me that we may be here for a fair amount of this strange and scary stuff, which means those of you who have your rapture shoes all laced up and ready to go may have to hang on for a bit and actually take a stand against some of this stuff before flying away, all glory. I'm speaking to myself here too, believe me, because how can we be considered as the overcomers mentioned in the book of Revelation unless we actually overcome something? All I know is we are definitely living in the days when truth is indeed stranger than fiction. And if I'm reading the signs correctly, the time is short, and we need to be ready and prepared for all that is soon to be coming upon the earth.